And the title of today's talk is part of our October theme of opening to our own grandeur. Now, we've heard this term about having delusions of grandeur as being a bad thing. But it's possible that those ideas of being grand are good. So today's talk is called E.T. Phone Home. And I was having a little fun with two things. One of them is the Steven Spielberg classic film, of course. And that one basically involves E.T., the extraterrestrial, just wanting to rebuild his ship so he can go home. And in the meantime, they got to keep him hidden, because that, it wouldn't work out very well if he got too much attention, then he couldn't go where he wants to go. Well, Eckhart Tolle offers us in A New Earth a way to go home as well, to the life that we were meant to live. And so I just come from a long line of people who like to play with words, and I thought, okay, E.T. phone home. E.T. just wanted to rebuild his ship so he could get home. And Eckhart Tolle, in a sense, was saying that when he back before, as he was writing and before the power of now, that his life was falling apart. And every fiber in his being just wanted to find a way home. So he did that by that beautiful letting go, that complete surrender, that I give up kind of thing, and then had a tremendous transformation. And in his next book, A New Earth, he begins to describe, in fact, he does more than begin to describe, the way home. So that's where that came from. The way home that Eckhart Tolle describes in A New Earth is so many things. All of us who have read the material, listened to it on CD, gone back and read it again, will likely go back yet again, because there's so much there that is of such great value. And there were three things that stood out, which were called the three modalities of awakened doing. And Tolle suggests that if we just remember those three things, if we remember to be in any one of those three states of being, what we end up doing is being in alignment with and cooperation with the creative forces of the universe. You could call that the law of attraction. You could call it the will of God. You can call it whatever you like. Whatever is comfortable for you. The thing is that these three states of being, these three modalities of awakened doing, allow us to stop fighting what is possible, to cooperate with it, and to recapture a lot of energy in the process. I love another book from Deepak Chopra called The 7 Laws of Spiritual Success. Well, I believe it's the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And one of those is the law of least effort. And that sort of resonates with what we're talking about today. So these three modalities are, number 1 is acceptance, number 2 is enjoyment, and number 3 is enthusiasm. Now, a lot of us have heard about acceptance, and we may have heard about it in a way that just didn't quite cut it. That might be that we should just get over it. Well, obviously, without resolving anything, just getting over it isn't going to do much good. So, of course, there's more to acceptance. Just as there's more to joy and more to enthusiasm. So before we take a look at those three things, though, I thought it would be fun to look at the symptoms suggesting that we might want to take a look at those things. Some of the obvious ones that we can point our finger at and say, oh, I'm so glad I'm not like that, would be people who are really acting out. Maybe the darkest of criminals, maybe the least sane who are not even kept among us any longer. Maybe the people we just can't possibly understand. And so we distance ourselves from them in our thinking, in our feeling, and in our physical proximity. We put them over there. However, there are subtler ways with just as much influence to live the unawakened life, to be an unawakened doing, and to be in struggle and strife and pain, to cause it for ourselves and for others. And I always like to think of which examples allow us to look at things more lightly, because this is serious business, and if we get too serious about it, we'll never look. So some of the funny ways that we go around in our unconscious doing, in which we might want to bring a little bit of awakened doing and acceptance, would be how we do the dishes, for example. Now, as a kid, I knew that I didn't want to do the dishes. I also knew that if my mother came home from work and they weren't done yet, I would be very sorry about that. So I had this little dance, this avoidance, Procrastination is a really good way to be an unawakened doing. Although it has its own strategy, but it's all based on avoiding being present and awake. So I would wait until the last minute, avoid it in every way I could, and then I'd rush to try to get it done before she got home, and it would break something, and there was more HELL to pay. Right? There are some other examples too. It's rather frightening how often we will drive somewhere that we go often and go through all of these processes which have become so automatic that we may not even remember how we got there and we were driving. And believe me, you don't need intoxicants in order for that to happen. Because the mesmerization of daily life can be intoxicating too. There are other things. Sometimes I will sit down and do two things at once, which is not recommended by a lot of people who teach being present in the moment. I'll write or read and maybe have some toast and coffee. And I'll look down and my plate is empty. And I'll ask, who ate my toast? Well, you can imagine the outcome of unconscious eating. That creates a whole other set of problems. Some of the others are, well, I have to be at an appointment. I often meet a friend from Fort Lauderdale, somewhere in Boca or Delray or something. We pick a place that's, I discovered, isn't really halfway, so that was part of the problem. We pick a place, we pick a time. I do my best to know when and where I'm going and how long it will take me and get prepared so that I can arrive, as a matter of fact, travel with ease. And sometimes I forget to do that. And I get my insanity back by the bucketful. If I don't realize how far it is, if I don't take the time to find out, because I have a means, I have a computer, I have a GPS, I have a telephone, there are maps in the car, there are ways to find out. But if some part of me is resisting, I will set myself up for a dose of insanity by not being sure where I'm going, where it is exactly I do mean, which exit it is, how far it is, how long it takes. And by the way, then there's always that bit about the realistic idea of how long it takes to get dressed, to show up the way you'd like to show up, to obey the speed limits along the way. These are the little things that we can and often do right off as necessary forms of non-awakened doing in our day-to-day lives. And each time we give away a little piece of our awakened doing, give away a little piece of our opportunity to be conscious, aware, and in the present, we get a different experience. Last night I added hissy fit to my list. There are a couple of ways that we act out that, although they are subtle, are signals that we are trying our damnedest, and I do mean that, to go ahead and stay in what we're in and keep doing what we're doing, even though we're no longer in joy about it. And this is a symptom that it's time to go back and look at those three modalities and, pick one. Pick one. So in the process of preparing many things, including the Gourmets for God thing, was just so exciting. The minutes and the half hours and the hours began to tick away. And this little thing inside me said, it's Saturday night. And I don't edit on Saturday night. I don't write on Saturday night. I don't think about anybody else's stuff but my own on Saturday night. And I had a little hissy fit. And I thought, isn't that funny? What am I studying? What am I preparing to share with you? You know what? The other part of all of this that I have been told, which is sort of a spiritual dichotomy, is that you can't share what you don't have, but teachers are advised to teach whatever it is they'd like to learn more about. And really, you could say, well, that's human life on this planet in a nutshell. So, acceptance. Acceptance is the willingness to say, okay, this is happening now. I acknowledge that I may not like it. I may acknowledge that something about this makes me afraid, probably because I don't know how to do it perfectly the first time out of the box. And so my little ego's all in a huff, or whatever the case may be. There's some resistance. But acceptance says, I'm willing to acknowledge that this is happening now. I am willing to proceed with it in peace. And what happens is that the acceptance, coupled with the doing, gives rise to a sense of peace, which in turn has another reward. It creates the opportunity for joy to creep in, maybe for the first time, or to creep back in, where it used to be before you got all excited and started anticipating the goal more than appreciating the present moment in the journey. So acceptance gives rise to peace, which leads to the distinct possibility in peaceful action, in full acceptance, in the present moment, in alignment with the creative forces of the universe, of experiencing joy. Now already, when I've got my hair in a twist or whatever the case may be, peace looks pretty good. And the fact that in addition to peace, I might actually enjoy what I'm doing, well, that's very appetizing as well. So then I step into joy. I discover that joy steps into me because I practiced acceptance. And I kept doing, willingly acknowledging that this is what I'm doing in the moment. And the next thing that happened is that I started to enjoy it. Now, reflecting on all of this and looking it over very deeply and incorporating it and reviewing it this week, I found that I enjoyed taking out the recycling, even sorting the paper from the plastic and, all of that. I enjoyed those things that are so tempting to just get done, right? Because that voice will say, well, I don't have time for joy, there's too much to do. That's the voice not to listen to. So moving from acceptance into this place where peace shows up and then enthusiasm is next because we're enjoying what we're doing. This enthusiasm is this burst of empowerment where you start to realize, I am really enjoying this. It often shows up when we're doing something that we have done in the past and we probably do regularly and we really enjoy. With anything, whether it's working out or writing or singing a song or making a pot or cooking a meal or playing in your garden or whatever it is, we have to take that first step. We have to set that thing in motion to allow that experience to begin to unfold. And of course, we're always hoping it'll be just like the last one. That's the ego talking. The truth is that it's not in the experience itself, but it's in how we experience it where the magic is. Acceptance, enjoyment, and enthusiasm are three modalities of being which all involve being in the present. They can be found nowhere else. Now we can reflect on things that we have experienced in the past that brought us joy and maybe get a little glow from it. And we can imagine things that we might do later and get a little high from it. And there's nothing like being in the present moment with those thoughts and taking action in that present moment with those ideas and feelings. Because that's when we are in alignment with the creative forces of the universe. And that's where dreams really come true, not in the past and not in the future. Although we do get a glimpse and an image, or as Michael Beckwith calls it, a climage. Although we do get fond memories from the past, the only way that we can create more of those and experience more of that which we dream about is in the present. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir. I also know that we're here today because we like to remember that. Because we might go to work tomorrow. We might go visit our family and revert back to when we were 12 unexpectedly over the holidays. We might have certain situations and circumstances which trigger who we used to be and sort of trip us up on our way to who we'd like to be. And as we've been singing and saying and reading for so long now, who we'd like to be, who we can be, is right here inside. There's this wonderful thing that happens with enthusiasm. What happens is that joy-filled doing gains momentum, and Tolle describes this as feeling like an arrow that is aiming and moving towards the target and loving the journey. I also know that the next thing he said is that this enthusiasm can sometimes be mistaken as stress. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I get excited, people tell me to calm down because they mistake my enthusiasm for stress and it makes them feel uncomfortable and they've got to shut me up. I've also done the same thing to other people. Don't bring your stress around me, I'm happy, I'm at peace, I'm kind of enjoying myself. So it's good to be able to discern the difference. Stress will separate the goal from the joy of the journey and focus entirely on the goal and forget to tap into that infinite power that can accomplish it all without effort, and then you know what happens. We get worn out. We get more wrinkles on our brow, We get our heart doing things that are not how it was designed to operate. All kinds of wonderful symptoms and signals that we are out of alignment with who we could be and how it could be. The other thing about enthusiasm is that not only does it create this feeling of a target and this joyful journey towards it, the target is a vision or a goal. You almost become possessed. In fact, some of the definitions of the word suggest sort of a spiritual possession, if you will. You become so sure that that goal, that aim, that vision is who you are meant to be and what you're meant to do with your life, that you dedicate yourself to it from that point forward. And there will be some who think you're just stressed out, and others who will recognize your enthusiasm depending on where they're at. And what happens is that you're able to reach more than you could before. You're able to accomplish greater things than you were before. You're able to love and enjoy more than ever before. And that's because you've tapped into something that's greater than yourself. Another thing that happens, now the ego could step in a while back and mess up that balance between the target and the journey and leave you stressed out. The other thing that can happen is that when you start to do great things, and people start to admire you for doing great things, and they think that that's who you are, and they forget that we're really all in this together on a level playing field. There's a part of you that can say, I know, aren't I great? That means, aha, the ego has slipped into the game again. How about that? All this glory, headlines and spotlights, and I have an opportunity to step into it and bask. In each case, whether you end up stressed out or puffed up, the directions are the same. When all else fails, read the instructions. They are, from Eckhart Tolle, to go back to those 3 modalities of awakened doing. Those 3 modalities. If you realize that you've really gotten yourself all tangled up and it's not fun anymore, start with acceptance. Start with acceptance. Let the peace come back into what you're doing. Make room for the joy to be possible in what you're doing. And if it's what you're truly meant to be doing, enthusiasm will come right back. And you'll be like that arrow heading for that target again, confounding your friends who don't understand and inspiring all of the others. There's one more thing that he suggests as well. That there will be many discoveries of things that you've been making yourself do that are not yours to do. And hard as you might try, you just can't even get into acceptance about them. They're not the mundane things of carrying on in daily life. He talks about changing a tire on a dark and rainy night in the Pacific Northwest, by the way, which would also be cold. They're things like laundry and taking out the trash and sorting the recycling. They're things like filing your bills, paying them, doing the dishes. They're things like prioritizing the parts of your life. But there are other things that you might have thought you had to do, even though every fiber of your being said, this is not me. When that happens, you stop. Find a way to take the time to go apart a while and reflect and say, could it be that just isn't mine to do? And give yourself permission to let that thing go. Because there's someone right next to you, 3 degrees away rather than 6 these days, who loves that thing. For some of us, it might be accounting, right? For some of us, it might be music or painting. There are those for whom things come easily, and there are those things that don't come easily to us. And we're meant to do the ones that are within us, that we love, that bring us joy. Because in so doing, we bring joy to the planet. We bring joy to one another. We move joy through our bodies, through our organs, tissues, and systems. We renew our lives and the lives of everyone we touch on the planet, close and far, in allowing joy to move through us. So I invite you to consider this, whether it is a review or it is something that you're hearing for the first time. Whatever is going on in your life, just remember these 3 things. I can stop and see if I can get into a place of acceptance. I can stop again and see if I can allow some joy to creep in. And then I can allow my enthusiasm to pour forth. I just love this. I think it is a permission slip for the excited and enthused children within each and every one of us who have known all along what was possible. Perhaps we have been hushing for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Perhaps we've been holding it all in for a very long time. And the truth is, we were right. We are meant to live out loud. We are meant to live in joy. The best things get made that way. The highest quality of activity takes place that way. That's what this center is about. And I don't know about you, but I want it to be what my life is about. So we're going to end this with standing and singing another song. It's a Ricky Byers song.